When I lived out in Iowa and we would hunt public and we would be, a mile plus back, the only people we would run into were people from the East Coast that drew Iowa tags.
Jon Lewis from Pennsylvania, lives in New York, has hunted across the entire country. We talk about how he made a perfect plan of shooting his target buck opening morning on public ground.
I finally had a spot where now he's not just like living there and moving through it, he's like going somewhere. So now I can really make a plan that I feel is I'm going to be safe.
We talk about terrain features, woodsmanship. We talk about scrapes, camera locations, summer scouting, all the different things that are top of mind more than likely as we get closer to season. So I hope you guys enjoy this with Jon Lewis. Here we go.
Most of the big scrapes that I hunt, I find a terrain feature that makes sense where deer are going to be moving through, and I make one. And then when I make it so I can hunt it.
Jon, welcome to the Whitetail Podcast. How you doing today?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
I'm always amazed of the Midwest whitetail family tree. And you were talking about, you're part of that family tree. So I would just love to hear how that happened. And I think it's such a cool story.
Right. Yeah, it's a big tree for sure. Like there's been the places that the people have gone through that program is pretty incredible. It's really cool. Really, when you look at any space in the outdoor industry, there's probably somebody there that went through the Midwest Whitetail internship or worked there. So, yeah, my story there started back in 2013. And like we were talking on the phone, I never really was looking to film hunts or edit videos. I was going to school for wildlife management. Like I told you, I was living on my grandparents' dairy farm. I was milking cows. Like I was just kind of like this redneck with a flip phone, no social media. But I loved watching Midwest Whitetail, and they always had the Ask Winky section. So for college, I needed to do an internship. And I was like, I'm just going to reach out and see if I can go out there for the summer, because they always offered the fall internships for video production and stuff like that. So I reached out to him and was like, hey, I got to do this. And long story short, he's like, we've never done that before, but come out, interview, and then, we'll go from there. So I rented like, I was like, I'm not driving my truck out there. So I rented like this little tiny Prius looking thing, left Pennsylvania, drove out to Iowa for 2 days, basically to do the interview, and ended up getting that summer internship. When I got there, it was at that time there would have been in the office. It was Greg, Drew Yarkowski, Pat McSherry, Warb, and if I'm forgetting somebody, I apologize, but those were the four full-time employees. So I got the summer internship, and then I got out there and kind of got a camera tossed in my hand, inevitably, just because that's what they do. Even if you're doing food plot work or whatnot, you're filming it. So, so I did that in the summer and had a blast. Learned how to edit, and Bill offered for me to stay for the fall. He's like, why don't you just stay for the fall, get the whole basically season of being out here. So I did that, and it was awesome. I mean, all those guys in the office, take you under your belt, and what you learn in 6 months. I was there a little longer. Is crazy, just because it's so run and gun at that point in time. Like I edited the East show, and then help film and do all that stuff. So you're just grinding through the fall and get thrown into the fire and learn a lot. And then I decided that I wanted to go back to school and finish school, which I did not do. We'll just throw that out there. So I went back to college for a semester. And at that point in time, Midwest Whitetail was editing a bunch of stuff for Cabela's, like Cabela's Spring Thunder. They had the Cabela's Whitetail series. They were doing land management stuff. So before I left, because I grew up as a really big waterfowl hunter too, I told Bill, I was like, if there's ever an opportunity for a waterfowl show, like, call me. And after that semester, I went back to school. He ended up calling me that summer It was like right before I was starting school again. He said, "Hey, we're going to do this waterfowl series. Do you want to do it?" And I said, "Can you offer me full-time employment?" He said, "Yep." I said, "All right, I'll drop out of school tomorrow." And that was 12 years ago. So here we are now. I worked out there for a couple of years, and then my wife and I ended up moving back towards the East Coast where our family's from. Um, Iowa was awesome. All those guys, it was a, you know, awesome experience. And I still have, great relationships with all of those people. But that opportunity from just reaching out to go out there in the summer to, that was the decision that got me to where I am today doing this full time, and living, a life that a lot of people would love to live. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that people don't see about it, but it's at the end of the day, it's a pretty cool journey.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. And what did your family think when you're like, I'm gonna go, work for free for summer, and oh yeah, I'm not actually gonna go back for the fall semester. What was that like?
Yeah, my family has always been super supportive of pretty much any type of venture I want to do. Um, you know, Growing up, my mom was and dad, they would before I could drive, they would be up at 3:30 in the morning to take me duck hunting and drop me off to go with my buddies or whatever and hunt. So I think it was like probably part of it was like, all right, here we go. This kid's been talking about wanting to hunt for a living for since he was 12. Like this is crazy. Like you can't do that, because our that generation before me, like my parents and stuff like that, that wasn't as much of an option. You didn't have the opportunities that we have today to literally take a passion as easily as we can do it today and make a career out of it. Um, I think that's something that's really cool about Midwest Whitetail and stuff is the amount of people that, you know, they took and they were able to help them make that passion into a career. Um, but yeah, there. I mean, I've always had really good support on that end, um, and I still do today from my family, and my wife, and friends and stuff like that. So I'm super fortunate on that end.
Yeah. Was there a difference because you were studying biology, out of the textbook in the classroom, and then you transition to in the thick of it, working on a really world renowned farm and doing helping with food plots and helping with hanging tree stands and everything. Was there something that shocked you when you got out there of like this is exactly what I was learning about, or were you not deep enough into the coursework where there wasn't a moment like that?
Yeah, I wasn't like super deep. I would have been my sophomore year. I think it would have been my sophomore year. So at that point, like a lot of the classes I was taking where I was going to school had nothing to do with wildlife management yet. It was like,
Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cells.
and like, I won't lie, I wasn't a good student at all. Like college was kind of like one of those things that was like, oh, you go to college, which looking back on it, I'm super glad I did because it got to me. I would have never got out of my shell to take that leap of faith for the internship because I would have never had to do one if I didn't go to college.
Mhm.
But like I was not a very good student. I was a worker. Like I wanted to work. Um, I think like off the bat, going from Pennsylvania to Iowa, the biggest eye opener was like, man, stuff really grows good out here. you know, like I remember the first time we like tilled up food plots and stuff. I was like, what is this? Like, there's no like, I'm used to like rocky, clay soil and stuff like that. So, um, but yeah, and then I always pictured Iowa way more flat than where we were. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's flat, but like the broken terrain and stuff was really cool in that part of the state. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't say anything like super shocking. I was shocked at that point that Bill didn't have a tractor on his farm.
Really?
It was like 1,200 acres, and he was still borrowing the neighbor's tractor, so that was pretty funny. But Yeah, and then we did that summer. They were doing a lot of the land management stuff with Cabela's and Jeremy Flynn. I don't know. I'm sure you know
Yeah, the
Jeremy
Hunter
from the
podcast. Yep.
Hunter. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So he was actually working out there that summer. So that's how I got to meet Jeremy, which is pretty funny. Two Pennsylvania guys end up meeting each other in Iowa and working on Winky's farm. So, but yeah. So
The Whitetail Podcast is brought to you by Moultrie. One of the first cameras I ever bought was a Moultrie, and they've come a long way. Whether after your first deer ever or this is your 20th year of hunting, Moultrie has you covered. Their cellular trail cameras have no SD card, very easy to use and set up right out of the box. I love to pair the Power Mag with a Pro Series camera. The Moultrie cameras are affordable, effective, and reliable with US-based customer service, 2-year warranty, and just a great camera. So the next time you're in the store and you're trying to decide what camera to buy, I encourage you to try a Moultrie if you want to support the podcast. What was one key lesson that you either learned from Bill or anyone out there that, and this could be in relation to land or in relation to hunting strategy? What's one thing that, because you're, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like young, still in college, and you get out there and you're surrounded with some excellent knowledge. Was
right.
there anything that you remember, like one little lesson or one little hunting strategy that you're like, man, that's really smart. I never considered that before.
Yeah. So where I grew up, the public land opportunities were very minimal. You kind of had like I was fortunate that my grandparents had a dairy farm in the part of Pennsylvania that I grew up, but it was very like cut and drive where you hunted. There wasn't really like the opportunity to go out and scout and read sign and like set up on different, you know, terrain features or whatever that may be. It was like little block of woods, bunch of fields, little block of woods, bunch of fields. And at that point, wasn't, I wouldn't say I was a advanced hunter by any means. You know, in high school and stuff, I was so busy with sports, like I hunted, but it wasn't like my life like it is now. Um, I would say probably the biggest um, lesson I learned was just to like reading sign, how to read sign, how to read big sign versus small sign, how to read sign that you want to hunt, um, and terrain features big time. You know that, and that's transferred into where I live now, which is way bigger country than what I grew up hunting. I grew up hunting, you know, the same 100 acres for 10 years. That was, and we just had our spots.
Yeah.
That was it. So, yeah, I think just reading sign, reading different types of, you know, uh, browse and stuff like that, which is different out there than it is out here. Um, Reading, you know, where deer are going to be during different times of the year and just exploring public ground.
Mm-hmm.
That's, we did a lot of that. So,
Talk a little bit about, I feel everyone talks about um, how people can't read sign anymore. People can't, or I guess is effectively can't read sign, can't figure out what sign means what. What are some key things that you think a lot of people misunderstand or maybe stuck with you throughout that process when you're learning all these different things of, oh, this browse means this, or another, you mentioned small sign versus big sign, and then sign to hunt on, sign not to hunt on. So what are some things that were correlated to that?
yeah, I think one thing that people get caught up on a lot is really reading sign and being like, is this something that just happened because there was a buck coming through here and he was, you know, fired up and he made a bunch of rubs and there's a bunch of these little scrapes in this little pocket? Like, is that because he's here? Is it because when he was in here, he spent a little bit of time and now he's gone? I'd say scrapes are the biggest ones that I spend the most time trying to like really key in on. Like, is this like something that is a continuous thing that deer are using, or is this just like rut sign, or is this, you know, feeding sign after dark, probably when they're coming up onto the ridge and feeding on acorns, but where is he before that? Where is he staging before that? Specifically scrapes. I mean, you can quickly tell if it's like a something that's consistently getting used over, or if it was just like a testosterone driven frenzy that something went, that a buck went through. A lot of times what I'm looking for is, if they're, bowled out more into the ground, if you can see roots that are exposed, that probably indicate they've hit it multiple years. If you can look at the licking branches and see, stuff that's been broken off years prior, and then where it is located and if it's huntable, right? So like you can find really, really good sign, but if you can't hunt there, what's it? It gives you, an idea of like, hey, there's probably a big buck in here. You could run a camera on that scrape and not hunt there and try to figure it out from there. But I think it's trying to determine that there's a level of fresh sign that you want to hunt, even if it's not, being used over and over and over again. Use it as indication. But yeah, I think that's probably the biggest one. The one I spend the most time on is locating scrapes.
Scrapes, I love scrapes. So I'm right there with you. That's a great place to get pictures, get intel, and I see what you're saying and there's some really key things on looking at, how often is this one that just popped up and next year it may not get hit, and then also the idea of can you hunt it? How often do you find a really, like, oh man, this is gonna get hammered a bunch year round, big community scrape?
Yeah.
How often are you like, I just can't hunt it? Is it 1 out of 10 times, 5 out of 10 times?
It's so different depending on where you're at. Like locally around me, most of the big scrapes that I hunt, I made. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. Like it's just like I find a terrain feature that makes sense where deer are going to be moving through, and I make one. And then when I make it so I can hunt it.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, like ones that I just find, I'd say maybe 2 out of 10.
Okay. Yeah.
Would be my rough. I'm just trying to think of like all the different places that I hunt in the grand scheme of things. And a lot of the bigger community scrapes that I find in other places are down in like bottoms, which can be really difficult to hunt in hill country. It's not that you can't hunt them, right? But they can be definitely difficult.
Mm-hmm. Where, what, and how are you making those scrapes that you're hunting over?
Where, what, and how. So obviously, if we're talking about like bigger terrain and stuff, I'm more or less trying to make them earlier in the season to get does hitting them. And then those are usually like super consistent on scrapes. And when you think about it, like it's a great spot for a buck to go to check all the does instead of like, so if you can get them going early, like right now, or, early August. And I pay attention a lot to like those doe groups in those areas. But like if I'm setting one up, I'm trying to set it up in a terrain feature where one, it's either super visible to a buck when he's moving through, where like if he's coming down a ridge where he's going to be able to see it, or he's literally going to walk right through it. But like I want to try to put it, where a saddle would be a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
Like you come through a saddle, you're finding, good trails. It makes sense in your mind. Like, hey, a buck should be cruising through here during the rut, going from different block to different block, or however, different mountain to different mountain, and there's not a scrape there, you should probably just make one, and when I make them, I make them huge. Like
what's
for
huge?
That visual
Like
aspect.
how many feet?
Like the size of a SUV hood.
Okay.
Or like if there's multiple, I'll make multiple of them, because you basically want something. Now's a good time of the year too, because you have high vegetation like in the woods, so you can knock that stuff down, make a scrape that's going to be super visual to a buck, because all of a sudden there's this flat spot where it might have been grassy or understory or whatever it is. They can come check it out. So like you want to get the visibility factor as well. I think that's part of the biggest ones. And if you can, even making, a rub or something right near there too. But yeah, and usually I'm looking for like in this part of the country, usually a lot of them are beach trees, beach limbs. They hold their leaves super long. That's primarily where I find most of the scrapes under. And you can get a lot of them, on logging roads, which in the hill country and stuff makes a lot of sense for them to be able to have a little flat surface overhanging beach limb. They're just kind of like crack. They can't not hit them. They have to, if they're walking that logging road, which is a normal path of travel, a lot of times they're going to walk right into them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually where you see a lot of them starting to pop up during the rut, which was what I was talking about, like those just testosterone driven ones. Like you walk down a logging road, there wasn't a scrape there. And then you walk down it the next day and there's like 30 of them, and that's just beach limb. He hits like every single beach limb that's hanging over there just because he feels he has to.
Yeah. Okay. I'm in the Midwest. I've never hunted out east. You've hunted both.
Yep.
What do Midwest guys don't understand about hunting New York, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire that you wish we knew?
Trying to think of how to say this without sounding not good.
Because
I mean,
it's rooted in the conversation of like, oh, if I, and I do think this is accurate for most times. Like, man, I hunt, in Maine, or I hunt, wherever, like really challenging states where there's low deer densities, big unbroken terrain, and there's no doubt it is more challenging in a lot of ways. And they say, well, what if I lived in Iowa, for example, I would have more success, and I do agree with that. So I'm giving you an opportunity to tell us Midwest folks what's going on.
Yeah, I think the East Coast in general is super underrated. I think there's a stigma that you can't shoot big deer unless you go out into the Midwest. Um, and it's not just about big deer. I'd say when I was living in Iowa and I was hunting public ground, and even like when I hunted Indiana and stuff, um, and I've never really hunted like farm country besides when I grew up in PA. I think most of the time is you guys don't go deep enough.
Mm.
And I think a lot of that is because you necessarily don't have to, right? You might not have to. But when I lived out in Iowa and we would hunt public and we would be plus, a mile plus back, the only people we would run into were people from the East Coast that drew Iowa tags. And then be like, you run into a guy back there and you're like, oh, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Vermont. Where are you from? Pennsylvania. Where are you from? And I'm not saying that nobody does that. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of that is probably because of the density of the quality of deer. You necessarily don't have to do that out there. And there's spots out here where you don't have to do it either. I mean, I have spots that I hunt 40 yards off the road, but I also have a lot of spots that are 1.5, 2, 3 miles back into the timber. I'd say that's my biggest one.
Mm-hmm.
But also, and we do, we have as our group, like we do a lot of land management. We have access to that. And, but it's just way different if you can't bring deer to you, right? You can't plant food plots. You can't do that type of stuff when you're working with 10,000 acres of nothing but trees and cuts, like so the Adirondacks is 6 million acres of trees. They can't cut it. Like they can't cut on there, so you don't have that opportunity or that option on a lot of the bigger scale stuff out here. So you have to go deep. You have to, and there's deer because of that. There's not deer that are as close because they don't have to be. If everything's the same, like maybe they relate to a cut or something like that, or a mass crop of some sort. But if the habitat's 2 miles back, that's where the deer's going to be. In the Midwest, if the habitat's 2 miles back, but you got a cornfield right up against the road, there's going to be deer up against the road. You may never have to get to the 2 mile back. So,
would you say the quality of East? I'm lumping here, but the eastern region of the United States. Do you think that hunting in that region is better now than what it was 10 years ago?
Yes, I do. I would have been, I'm 33, so I would have been, earlier in my like serious hunting career at that point. And really, I didn't deer hunt as much because I was doing so much with waterfowl. But I think there's a lot more people that understand or are realizing like, hey, if there are big deer around because it's been so publicized. It's so much easier for people to see like, hey, these things do exist than it was, when we were younger and you saw them in the magazines or you saw them, on TV, on Monster Bucks or whatever. And then you just kind of look at it and go, oh, I could never do that. Where now it's like you're seeing the quality of deer that are getting shot because people put them up on social media, people have YouTube channels, people showcase it. So I think it meant that, if you're consuming that type of content in the back of your head, no matter how you spin it, when that, young buck walks in, you're still thinking like, hey, Billy Bob shot this really big buck. I know he's not that far, you're thinking about it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with, shooting young bucks or anything like that. Like, I think people should hunt because they love hunting and want to hunt, like whatever drives them to hunt, as long as they're, doing it legally. That's the whole point. But yeah, I think it's better for sure. That's a
Mm-hmm.
long-winded way of saying that. Yeah.
Well, we got to count our wins in the whitetail community because I feel like we're often too negative.
Yeah.
And so that's why I asked, because I had a feeling you were going to say it was better. And admittedly, I'm basing that off of, social media and what I see and like looking at the success that you guys have too. Um, I guess it's encouraging, or it could be encouraging for anyone for that matter. Now it's summer, and we were talking here not long ago, and I was like, "Are you a big summer scouting guy?" And you kind of, uh, I used to, but now life's too busy, um,
Yeah.
and I don't get to do it as much as I used to. Do you feel with the less scouting in the summer, do you feel truthfully behind the eight ball because you're not out there, or do you feel that you have the foundation and you feel like you can kind of scramble and make it work?
Yeah. So it's kind of 50-50. Um, a lot of times when I first moved here, it was like always my my process was every summer I try to dissect a new piece of public ground. Um, and I did that for 6 summers. So by doing that, I've located quite a few that are good year after year. And not saying they'll always be good and there's going to be off years and things shift all the time. I don't really feel like I'm behind the eight ball right now. If you asked me 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I'd say, yeah, big time. But I also think at this point, it helps me a little bit because I'm not thinking about other places. Like I've kind of found those. If I get the time now, it's more dissecting those places that I know are worth hunting than
Hmm.
going to find another place that I'm probably not going to get a chance to hunt anyway because I already have enough places.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Hmm.
So my kind of move is if I feel like I need to go to a new place, I'd rather just scout and hunt it in the fall than scout it in the summer.
On the fly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The other thing is too, a lot of spots I would get if I was scouting right now. Um, Usually, what I would do, and this was before really cell cameras, and there's really only select places I can run them because of cell phone service in general. But I would just soak a bunch of regular cameras and not touch them until like maybe I would go back there if we got snow in rifle season and still hunt around in the snow and check some cameras, but I wouldn't even touch them. I just let them sit there before I put a bunch of time into something that may not be worth my time.
Hmm.
I go back in December and pull my 10 cameras and there's 60 guys in blaze orange walking through there, or I didn't get something that I'm interested in, then it's like, okay, I didn't waste my time here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I look at it. I mean, I basically need, 4 or 5 days to go and get my stuff kind of situated where I want to get it. And then I can just back off. I do, as far as like hunting Pennsylvania and stuff like that, because I haven't really hunted it a whole heck of a lot over the last couple of years. I'm like really itching to get into there in the summer more, like now, like last week or the week before. Like I should have been out there. Like I feel like I'm behind the 8 ball when it comes to like a spot like that I'm gonna spend a decent amount of time in on the fall. But locally, I feel okay.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned dissecting a new farm, and I feel that, or dissecting a new area on a high level. Where do you start? Because I feel like there might be some things that you do that seem obvious to a lot of people, but there's
Mhm.
still, I think, probably some key things that no matter if you're hunting public or private, or maybe there's something that you do to dissect a piece that someone could do for a piece they've hunted for the last 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, locally for me, the biggest thing I'm looking for is super steep stuff. Just because it keeps people out, makes it harder to access. And I've never rolled into a place that's super steep and not found a big deer.
Mm.
So that's, relative to like local stuff, what I'm looking for.
Did
The
you
other
notice,
thing that I'm,
real quick, did you notice that in Iowa too? Because I know they don't have, there's very little places you're going to cliffed out in Iowa. But you know what Midwestern people call a hill and what you guys call a hill are probably two different things. I was curious if that, I'm curious because you've traveled, in multiple states, Indiana and everywhere else. Like, does that philosophy of find steep terrain relative to the area and it's still like that model
yeah,
works?
I would say so. I mean, yeah, it all depends on what your version of steep is. Like for example, I'm talking about like when you look at a map and the topo lines are very, very tight, like you said, like
Yeah.
cliffs with like tiny little benches down below them, which is hard to say because I don't know, like you said, that's not really relative to anywhere in the Midwest. Like I'm trying to think of where I hunted, Ohio. Yeah, I mean, I think steep terrain is always going to be good because it gives them a level of safety. One for where they can bed with wind, sight, and getting the heck out of Dodge when they see something. When you're in that steep stuff, like some of the stuff that you see deer run up, you would look at it and be like, they're not going up there until you bump them and they get up and over that in a heartbeat and they're good. Like
Yeah.
it's crazy. They get up over that and you can come back up and they might just be chilling on the backside completely content because they feel safe. Or they can just drop down off the side and be gone. So yeah, I mean, I think it's relative to where you're at. But everywhere I hunt is not flat by any means. Um, yeah, I'm always looking for terrain.
So you start,
And then,
yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, sorry for interrupting. So you start with terrain, and then I was just gonna ask what's next.
yeah, yeah, and then access. So like, I'm going to look on a map and see how many different places people can get into this piece. And I'm speaking specifically about public ground because that's
Yeah.
majority what I hunt. How many people can get into this piece? Where can they get in? And then not only that, go and look at it because I found spots where it looks like people can get in and maybe that road's gated off and you don't know that. Or maybe, there's certain scenarios that people actually aren't going in there. I have a spot that I hunt around here that I didn't, it took me probably 4 years to even go scout it because I saw that there was an access point that would put people really close to what I thought looked like the best stuff on that piece until I went and drove it and I realized it was a private road that was gated 2 miles before people could get down there. So now that spot that I thought was probably getting hunted was like 2.5 miles from the closest access point. And then I go back in there and there's giant buck sign everywhere, So, and mostly the hunting pressure is coming from private side, not guys coming in from the public side. So yeah, checking those access points finding them on a map and then actually putting your eyes on them and seeing if they are what you think they are.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So terrain access. What else? What else are you is high on the priority list?
it kind of goes hand in hand with that. Like when we were hunting in Ohio, it was access and terrain. Okay, there's access right here, and it's a freaking mountain right off the access point. But once you get up over that, you're back into some really nice stuff. So like, how many guys are going to park their truck there and go, I'm going to walk up that thing? Not a lot. So like, it's kind of a mend of the two. Like your terrain, obviously for hunting, but also terrain for your access. Like what's going to be hard for people to right off the bat that's going to knock 60% of them out because they don't want to do the work to get to the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that knocks a lot of people out. I mean, I have conversations with people about, you know, even running cameras and stuff. It's like, I don't get pictures of people very, very rarely. And it's just because they don't want to do the hard stuff to get to where the good stuff is,
Yeah.
you know? And I always make the joke, like, I'll drop you a pin right where you should go, but you're not going to go there. So I think it's just having that mindset of dealing with the suck for a little bit to get to the good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Now you shot a big deer opening morning in New York.
Yeah,
Right?
opening.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Opening. I wanna break down because I feel like some the guys that find success right off the rip had a really good plan. I mean, you're not killing a big deer on opening, within the first couple days of season without homework. I mean, that's just
Right.
my opinion of it. When did you identify that deer, and like, was there anything in relation to the summer? I know you have a video showcasing everything, but I'm just curious, what patterns and trends did you follow with that deer, and how it came to fruition?
Whether you're hunting public or private land, onX puts powerful mapping tools right in your pocket. See property lines, access, wind, and weather data. I have thousands of pins from the last 10 years, and it is one of the most effective tools for planning a hunt, to in-hunt, to post-hunt. Know where you stand, know the land, own the hunt with onX.
Yeah, so I actually, to my knowledge, there's a very good chance that I knew of him before, but he caught my attention in this season prior. Showed up in the middle of summer as just like a beautiful 9 point, and I hunted him all that fall. And saw him once, basically in the same spot that I ended up killing him. And then he disappeared for a while, showed back up in December, and he had already shed one side. But the whole season, I had like an idea of what he was doing and where he was bedding. And I went back and I had been hunting that spot in that area for a while, probably like 3 years, pretty heavily. And that pocket always has big mature deer in it. And they're always there in the summer. But
what's the terrain type that keeps them there in the summer, if you're willing to share? I know it's public, so it's like I'm not trying to ask too intrusive a question.
Yeah, a lot of times, there's like they love north facing slopes in the summer. It stays cooler. Usually you have water. It's steep. And one thing I always look for in this monotonous timber is just some sort of disturbance, whether it's, maybe it's a windstorm came through and it might be 10 trees it knocked down, but you have some sort of disturbance there that's creating some new growth or something that's just different. And usually it's some sort of browse or, a little thicker patch. We have a lot of ash out here. Well, we did have a lot of ash. So those ash trees are pretty much all dead, and you'll find these pockets where, it was probably a pocket of ash and it all fell down, and now you have all this green growth and, good browse and stuff that is perfect for the summer. And that's rare, like around us. Like we have some cuts and stuff like that, but like our timber's pretty open, monotonous stuff. So when you find that disturbance, usually you're finding wildlife, just like anywhere.
And I mean, I've been to the Great American Outdoor Show a bunch and talked to a lot of people from Pennsylvania, and everyone's like, cuts, 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 fresh cuts, second year cuts. But I feel like identifying like that, something like that, is that something you can find easily on e-scouting, or is it a little bit more challenging?
For cuts or for
For
what I'm talking
an
about?
ash board, the ash tree is getting disease and dying, and then a new flush of growth.
Depending on what like time of the year that your map layers are on. Um, if it's summer, you'll see pockets of it because they'll just be like dead.
Mhm.
As far as seeing like the understory part of it, when it's that small, it's more boots on the ground,
Yeah.
um, running through and finding it and marking it. And I find a lot of that stuff. Sometimes it's an old homestead of some sort, or like I found wells and stuff like that where there's probably a house at some point, and or a barn or something like that. How they got there, I have no idea. But and then every once in a while you get lucky, like where I killed my buck, is there's an apple tree. Right now, you got this apple tree in the middle of thousands of acres of timber. And if that thing has apples, like there's gonna be deer on it.
Yeah.
And where I killed my buck, there hadn't been apples up there for years. I think it was like 4 or 5 years. Um, and I had hunted him there quite a bit the year before, and he was always in there. He was always in there like at like 9:30 in the morning on October 4th, or like noon. He's walking through there, and everyone's like, "How are you not killing him?" I'm like, "Because I can't be in there at that point, that time." Like the reason he's in there is because he's safe. Like the way
Mhm.
the thermals are rolling through there and everything like that. So um, normally that area is really good early, and then it gets really good in the rut, like October through like November 4th. So my plan was to attack him early because of the apples. I finally had a spot where now he's not just like living there and moving through it. He's like going somewhere. So now I can really make a plan that I feel is I'm gonna be safe. Because before it was like he
It could
just
be
was
anywhere.
all over the place. Yeah. And I had, after going back in time that winter, I had put a lot of time up there to really like make myself confident that this is where he's bedding and this is where he's coming from. And when
Mhm.
I did that in the winter, it just helped me mentally be super confident in what my plan was. And when I got into my truck, I told Cody, I was like, I don't know why, but like, I think we got a really dang good chance killing this buck. And like, that's not a normal feeling. Um, you get that every once in a while,
Mhm.
and having confidence is huge. But that one was definitely like, I felt really good about it. I felt like our system was dialed. I felt like we knew where he was. I felt like we could get in clean, and you know, if it and it just worked out. I mean, a lot of luck involved, you know, with any type of hunting. But that one was super special. And that was like the first deer that I really did that with,
Yeah.
um, because normally I don't have that type of history with them. Uh,
Mhm. So
and
what did you got? I assume you got velvet pictures of them, and then at what time did you go in and verify or look to see if there was going to be apples on that apple tree? And then like, okay, yeah, this is going to come together.
yeah, so I think I went in there around this time last year,
Hmm.
and I put the camera, and I could tell there's apples in there, and then I put the camera up, and just historically, like knowing the amount of deer that are always in there, whether there's apples or not, and then locating that, like verifying that. And I think I put a camera out, and he was on there like 2 days later.
Mm.
And he was
Yeah.
like on there, on there, on there. And then like 2 weeks before season, a black bear ripped my camera off the tree. And old John would have been like, I got to go back up there and hang that thing back up and make sure he's still doing it. But I was like, he's going to do it. If I go up there, I'm not like, it's as good as a plan as any. Just stay the heck out of there and
Hmm.
go in and try to kill him. Um, and I don't know if I would have went up there a week before season and bumped him. I don't think he may have just came right back, but
Sure.
I think confidence is a big one, and gaining that confidence in what you're doing as you do it more is huge.
Do you think, yeah, that's the key thing of not overthinking it too. Cause would you say that most hunters inherently just overthink things to death?
I think everybody does. I mean, I do too.
Yeah, me too.
Especially when it comes to cameras and stuff. Like I chased my tail for, 2 years doing that thing. And it just messed me up more than just having confidence in a spot and just sticking to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I love trail cameras. I think they're a great tool. But if you don't have some sort of hard stop when you start doing something, like if you can't recognize hey, I need to stop doing thinking this way, they can really screw you up. So I did that for a year or two, and I just stressed myself out with them. So
yeah, it's
try not to do that. Yeah,
I feel like that's the natural evolution of trail cameras. You at one point, if you're not doing that, then I don't know. I feel like everyone, and that's why some people put them
2 in the morning, bloodshot eyes, oh, he was there. I shouldn't go in there today, or just that. It'll really screw you up.
Yeah, when I started running cell cameras for the first time, I had them set to where it would send pictures at midnight, and I'm not even kidding. I would wake up naturally at 12:02. Like, okay, I gotta check the feed. What happened yesterday? All right, yep. All right, go back to bed. And I was like, man, that is a full blown addiction.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that is funny. What's something that you pay attention to, whether it's a trail camera photo or video, that you think a lot of people overlook? Because in the same theme of trail cameras, a lot of people are, oh, yep, he was there, and that's where it starts and ends. What are you trying to glean out of the information that you get on a camera? Because and that ties in perfectly to not overthinking things too.
Right. Yeah. Where he's coming from, and if you can see where he's going,
mm-hmm.
Rather than him just being there. How long was he there? The time he was there. I think people really pay attention to that. But it's if you're getting a picture of, on a big scale things, like if I'm breaking down a new piece and I've got this buck here every night at midnight. Okay, how can I backtrack to see where he actually is, or how can I look at a map and try to figure out where he could be coming from, where I could actually kill him in the evening? Mm-hmm. To get a picture of a buck every night in the middle of the night, it's great to know he's alive, but how it relates to how you're going to kill him, he's alive, so unless not being content with just getting pictures of deer, over how can I use the information to get to a spot where I can actually have an opportunity at this thing.
Yeah. What's looping back to your time in Iowa, what's one myth about Iowa that you would love to debunk?
I'd say that there's a giant buck around every corner. There's big deer, right? But there's not. And granted, when I was out there, it was right after EHD and stuff too. So it was kind of on the rebound. There's giant bucks all over the place, but there's still spots that don't have them.
Yeah.
I'd say that, especially on the public aspect of things. We saw some giant bucks, but they weren't around every corner.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that probably comes from the East Coast mentality of people out here that go out there, and I guess it's all relative to what a giant buck is too, but you don't see them out here. If you're coming from Vermont or New Hampshire or Maine, you're not driving around in the evening cruising bean fields and seeing 170-inch deer out in them, or even 100-inch deer, because that doesn't exist. You can't drive around and see deer. Out in Iowa this time of the year through August, one of my favorite things to do is just drive around and you're probably going to see some big deer, which I think gets the mentality of there's a big buck around every corner
because they're more visible. Yeah.
Right.
That's always something that I always think of people that hunt out east when you ask someone how important is it to glass? And it's super important. And is there any glassing opportunities that you take advantage of that you can in some of the terrain that you hunt, or is it just not feasible?
There's like, if you have like a fresh cut on a side hill or something like that, or you have a snowy side hill, late season, I'd say it's you know a good move. Um, but most of the time, like when I'm like during bow season, like my binoculars are maybe in my pack, like, but and I mean, there's parts of the state, even like by me, like we have ag, so like you can drive around and glass that type of stuff and see if it backs up the public or whatever. Um, but yeah, like going out and glassing and spot and stalking a deer is pretty minimal.
Yeah.
I'd say like once you get further east, even those cuts and stuff, unless you can get like on an opposite hillside and glass down into it, I just don't know how. Maybe if you're moose hunting, but for like whitetails, I don't know that it'd be worth your
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's every area has its challenges, and some have way more challenges, and there's no doubt about it. And that's where I think, you know, do you find more satisfaction um, tagging tagging that target buck on opening day on public, having to work really hard, or you show up in said state and you shoot a buck like in 3 days or 4 days or 5 days or 7 days, whatever it is. Is there a level of satisfaction that varies between those two things?
Yeah, I think it's different. I think at the end of the day, the satisfaction is ultimately the same. It just is a different the like I'll use the New York buck I shot last year. I felt like I kind of had like a relationship with that deer. Like we were playing this game, like we were making our moves back and forth, and there was more of a chess match. So like that satisfaction of succeeding in that aspect was really high. I think a satisfaction of like going to Ohio and not having any idea of the area, picking a piece, breaking it down, and setting up and killing a deer is like a satisfaction of woodsmanship. And granted, woodsmanship goes hand in hand. Like you're not going to just roll in and kill a really nice buck on public if you have pictures of them for 3 years doing the same thing every day, if you don't have a level of woodsmanship. But I think like it's just a different feeling. Um, One of them, like, I mean, I always have some sort of remorse when I kill a deer because I'm a human and you're killing something. And it's like, like that, like when I killed that New York buck, it was just kind of like, dang, like, man, like I feel like I like kind of knew what you were doing. Like, but I think that relationship thing is a different level of satisfaction than just going and killing a deer. And I don't know which one I like more. I don't think I like one more than the other. I think I like it all. And that's the cool thing is like I can do it both ways. If I'm around home, I can try to build those stories and stuff like that. But if I want to travel, I feel confident that I can at least go to a piece and be somewhat in the game, just based off of reading sign knowledge and past experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Like that Indiana buck was one of the coolest hunts that I've ever been on because I didn't know anything about that piece at all, like no prior information. Literally, let me find the biggest chunk of timber that I can find, and that's where we killed him.
Yeah.
And we saw like 26 bucks in 3 days and not
That's
a single
crazy.
hunter. Yeah. So.
Well, that's that. I feel like that shows that there's opportunity out there, and that was part of the public land challenge a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, I think it was 2021.
Yeah, I guess more than a couple of years now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool, man. I want to dive into more of your hunts, and I really appreciate you hopping on here today. Where can people follow along with what you have in the pipeline and hunts and podcasts and everything else?
Yeah. So all of our hunting content is on Just Hunt Club, the YouTube channel. We have a website called justhuntclub.com. And then it's been probably like 7 months. We started another channel called the Just Hunt Podcast. So that's basically a weekly thing. Brett, who's part of our team, hosts that, and then Matt produces it and co-hosts it. And we dive into all sorts of stuff there, from hunt breakdowns to having guests, which I know I was talking to Brett before. He said he definitely wants to try to get you on there to chat about some land stuff, because he's big land management type stuff.
Yeah, don't ask me about the big woods. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, well, he has a farm in New York now that
That's
he's
cool.
doing a lot of management stuff on. So, and then all of our socials are at Just Hunt Club. So, we're pretty active. We've got a couple hunts that we held back from last year that we're putting out this summer. Do a bunch of whitetail stuff, bunch of turkey stuff, waterfowl. So, I think we got like over 400 videos up there at the moment. So, yeah, we got a bunch of stuff coming this fall, so it should be fun. I think one of the cooler things that we're doing, we did it last year. We're kind of putting together more of a film style with it, is hunting islands in the Atlantic Ocean. So that's pretty cool.
That's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, it's fun. So we're gonna be heading up there in a couple weeks, getting all that stuff set up, and hopefully this year we can get some redemption, because last year we kind of screwed ourselves. So, but yeah, so we're always doing stuff. Basically, our goal is to showcase that you can go anywhere in the country and have fun and find an adventure, and most likely you can be on a big deer. Another thing we really try to showcase is just to tell people to go experience stuff. If you're in New England and you've never gone out to Ohio to hunt the rut, like go to Ohio and hunt the rut. If you're in Illinois and you've never been to New Hampshire and you want to come and chase a buck on snow, like go do it. Just there's so much cool stuff in the hunting world that we don't have enough years to experience it all. So if you're scared to do it, there's so many resources to look at and reach out to that can help you, or just help you with your confidence to go and explore and have fun. Ultimately have fun and experience stuff while you can.
Yeah, I love it. Well, awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Jake. I appreciate it.
There you guys have it. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Whitetail Podcast. I want to say thank you so much to Moultrie, Onyx, Painted Arrow, Hawk Optics for allowing us to continue this show. I've had some comments. It's weird talking about other companies when you've used one trail camera company, co-owned a trail camera company for 8 years or 9 years, whatever it was. Yeah, it is a little weird, but it's allowing us to continue these conversations, to share it with all of you folks. So if you want to support the show, continue it. It would mean a lot if you're at the store and you're looking maybe for trail cameras. Give Moultrie a glance. See if it's a good fit for you. If you're looking for a pair of new optics and you're in the optics aisle, check out Hawk Optics. It would mean a lot to them and to us for allowing us to keep continuing this. We hope to see you back next week. See ya.